Evening. Tonight we're going to be talking about lesson 3, and that is networking. Networking is one of the most important things you can do, and it's really underrated in the small business world. I talked about this in my first video, but I do absolutely no advertising whatsoever, but we're always booked 3 to 4 weeks out in advance. The other thing is we market ourselves towards the quality-oriented customer. And that's something that's really important as well, because when you're networking, most of the time people are looking for, trust is always a factor. Advertising in general is a very inefficient way to spend money. People automatically look at advertising with a grain of salt, and they're very hesitant about utilizing advertising as the means for which they're going to decide whether or not they want to go with the service. Word of mouth is always the best way to get new customers. When I get cold calls, and when I say cold calls, I mean that's from all my organic advertising, like Google Places, Google Maps, Yelp, Facebook. When I get those cold calls to come out and do estimates, I'm usually only closing probably 25 to 30% of those. But from all of my customers who've recommended me, or other businesses that I've built relationships with, when I get recommended by them, usually I close between 80 to 90% of those bids. So a huge disparity in those numbers between advertising versus networking. So that's the first thing with networking. The second thing with networking is the fact that now you're not only working off from your reputation as a business owner, but especially when you start to get into business type networking situations, now you're also working off from somebody else's client list and somebody else's reputation. For me, for example, there's a very large house cleaning and roof cleaning organization here in my area, and they pressure wash driveways, they pressure wash roofs, they're more established than me in terms of size as a business. So what they do when they go out, they go to pressure wash a roof. They're like, hey, listen, we really don't want to pressure wash this roof because you're going to get all the sap from the trees, you're going to get all the pitch from the pine, all the leaves. You really need to have these limbs taken back. I've got this guy, he does great work. So who are they going to call? Are they going to get in a phone book and look up some guy and hopefully he shows up on time and hopefully he does the job? Or are they going to call the guy that their company, who they already love, just recommended? Well, they're going to call me. And then I'm up front with them every time. Say, listen, I'm not going to be the cheapest guy, but I'm going to provide the best service for you. I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to do the job how I say I'm going to do it. And I don't tell them this, but I always underpromise what I'm going to do. So when I leave that job, it actually ends up looking better than what they were anticipating. So now they love you. You've added value to not only yourself, not only to the customer, but also that other business owner that just recommended you. So you make them look good. And that's the value of networking. The other thing about networking is now you have got a network of people that you can recommend. So for example, when I first started this business, I did lawn care. I did, everything that most tree guys do, right? But I found that I got so busy doing trees, I had so much money tied up in tree equipment that I could not afford to go out and do a $50 lawn. It just didn't make sense to me. So I started developing, guys in the industry that did lawns only. So now anytime one of my customers is like, hey, I love the work you do, can you do my lawn? I say, well, I can't, but I've got a guy who I know can. And what ends up happening is he doesn't do trees. He doesn't want to accept the risk. He doesn't have the equipment. So now I hand him all these customers, and every time somebody comes up and says, I need this 30-foot tree, well, he's not comfortable doing that. So he's like, you know what? I got a guy. So either I work directly for that customer or I sub under him. The point I'm getting at is networking will allow you to get as many jobs as you'll ever want, and you're never going to have to advertise. Advertising has its place. specifically when you're trying to build a brand, if you're trying to grow and you want to get your name out there. It does have its place, and we'll get into that later on in the lessons. But what I wanted to focus on today is, especially when you're just starting out, or even as you start to mature, utilize networking, because networking will be by far your most profitable form of advertising without actually spending money on advertising.